This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Eben Jansen. This show is live and is broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now, with the whole show then available on our YouTube channel all the time. The Oscar Pistorius trial resumes after a postponement last week. E-tolls caused much consternation in Gauteng. Today we ask if there are viable new options and if they are on the table. And with another cold front gripping the country, what are you doing to make this winter warmer for everybody? First, Anin has the headlines.
Good morning, I'm Anin Dormal. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. A legal expert says the leaked video footage of murder-accused Oscar Pistorius running on his stumps with his arms outstretched as if pointing a gun could strengthen the state's case. Professor Shada Gitto says the judge will have to decide if the footage is admissible in court. The footage was shot by an American company as the Pistorius legal team reconstructed events on Valentine's morning last year when Pistorius shot and killed Reeva Steenkamp. A lawyer for Pistorius has slammed the leak as unlawful and a severe breach of trust. The family of murdered honeymoon bride Annie Devani is strongly objecting to medical parole for her convicted killer. Correctional Services says it's urgently considering the parole application for Xolile Mngeni. He was sentenced to life in prison for Annie's murder. Mngeni is currently in a critical condition in a Cape Town hospital after being diagnosed with a brain tumour. Mop-up operations are due to begin today after a cold front in the Cape Peninsula left thousands of people in need of relief. The cold weather left a trail of destruction in low-lying areas. More than 40 millimeters of rain fell in 2 days, leaving the peninsula drenched. It even prevented families from burying their loved ones as cemeteries were flooded. It does now seem that the worst is over as the cold front has moved towards the eastern parts of the country. Novak Djokovic has returned to the top of world tennis standings after a Wimbledon win that he described as special. The Serb beat seven-time champion Roger Federer from Switzerland in 5 sets in a titanic battle that lasted close to 4 hours. The South African ODI captain Eben de Villiers has described the team's 75-1 win over Sri Lanka as satisfying after a difficult tour out last time. The Proteas drew first blood in the 3-match one-day international series in Colombo. The South African team also outshone the hosts with both bat and ball and now have an early advantage in the 3-match series. Remember, all of these stories are on our Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Anin. The murder trial of Oscar Pistorius resumes today in the North Gauteng High Court, bringing the legal fate of the ex-Olympic sprinter back into the public eye. But the trial could be overshadowed by the latest video footage that was broadcast on Australian TV over the weekend, which was part of pre-trial preparations for the Paralympians' defence team. Meanwhile, the National Prosecuting Authority says it hasn't watched the video in which murder-accused Pistorius reenacts the moments before and after shooting dead Reeva Steenkamp. Now, to get an update on the proceedings, we are joined by Griselda Lewis, as always. Good morning, Griselda.
A very good morning to you, Eben.
Griselda, I understand you have a guest there this morning, but just tell us about this storm that is overshadowing proceedings this morning.
Well, Eben, another about to turn in the Oscar Pistorius murder trial following that leak of that video showing Oscar Pistorius reconstructing, or part of a reconstruction, apparently that was shot last year in October, where the defense had brought in this firm from the United States for that reenactment, where we see Oscar Pistorius moving on his stumps and carrying his sister Amy Pistorius in the home of his uncle. There was part of the pre-trial preparation in terms of the defense, but certainly they've slammed the leaking of this video, and it was basically run on an international network. Was part of a documentary that was run on this firm in Australia, on this network in Australia. So certainly that's what we're expecting to take centre stage this morning inside court, and what impact that will have on the trial moving forward. But to get a bit of insight on what are the possibilities of the trial and what shape it might take this morning, I'm joined by Dr. Llewellyn Kerr-Lewis, who will give us a bit more about what to expect this morning. Dr. Kerr-Lewis, thanks for your time once again. I want to talk a bit about, moving forward. What is the likelihood this morning? Certainly the defence would want to bring up the issue relating to the leaked video.
Well, I do think we will have an interesting morning today. Obviously, the right thing to do would be for the defence to, from the outset, raise the issue regarding the leakage of the video footage, and then obviously take it from there. I would suspect that the judge, Thokozile Matsipa, will pronounce something on the issue. She might be inclined to ask both parties to address her on the issue, to make up her mind there and then. Obviously, it's still the prerogative of the state to decide whether they want to introduce that evidence before court, because it might have a bearing on the credibility of the evidence inter alia of Professor Dermot that is currently under cross-examination. So let's see what happened there.
Well, that is certainly likely to come up, because we recall the testimony of Professor Derman, where he spoke a lot about Oscar Pistorius' mobility on his stump, saying that it was quite difficult. But the video certainly shows Oscar Pistorius moving backwards and forwards, able to carry an imaginary gun, able to carry Amy Pistorius, who in that reenactment was acting as Reva Steenkamp. So certainly those are some of the critical questions that need to be answered moving forward.
Well, we must be careful to make assumptions before the evidence is obviously introduced into court. But on the assumption that it is admissible and that it is relevant, found to be relevant by the presiding judge, then obviously it will have a bearing on specifically that evidence that you've just referred to, in which instance it might imply that there's a contradiction once again in the evidence by the defence, and that will have a prejudicial effect on the defence case.
I want to talk about the timing of this. Certainly there are questions about why now, where has this video been all along, why was it not used inside court? Because initially it was for the company to make a visual map of what happened before, during and after the shooting and killing of Reva Steenkamp. So the timing, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it is alleged by the defence that they have taken this footage in preparation for their trial. Now, why it wasn't introduced by themselves at an earlier stage, that remains to be seen. However, I do think at this stage it is to the benefit of the state. Whether it's bad timing for the defence, well, that also remains to be argued. And I suspect that Barry Rule will make a big thing about it. It's been said by the family, according to newspaper clippings, that there's some kind of privilege that is applicable in this instance, and that it shouldn't be allowed in court. Now, if the judge agrees with that sentiment, then obviously the court won't even take cognizance of the contents of the video footage, in which event, once again, Gerrie Nel must go back to the drawing board and decide whether he wants to maybe consider reopening his case for the state and try to get that information and evidence before court in another capacity.
But the state did ask on Thursday, hence the court did not sit on Friday. It did ask for more time in order to consult, according to Gerrie Nel, with a state psychiatrist. This about to turn. Certainly this is something we've never seen in a South African, at least at this scale, certainly in a South African court.
No, it's not that uncommon, I must say. What happens here is that Gerrie Nel wants to make sure that before he finalises his cross-examination, that he covered all his angles. He wants to consult his own experts to maybe try and contradict the evidence.
Don't
you think if she would move out?
Now is not the time.
Sizomsupport in any way we can. Uzoba right, Let's cut this, mate. Should I be nervous?
Not unless you have something to hide.
They're all me, not a thing. Unless you're going to ask me how much I weigh. That's one thing.
Gauteng High Court today. Of course, we'll be live there a little bit later. Now, just to recap, Oscar Pistorius lawyers are said to be taking legal action after leaked video footage of the Paralympian aired on Australian television. In the footage, Pistorius reenacts the events that occurred before he shot and killed Reeva Steenkamp early on Valentine's morning last year. It was apparently filmed during pre-trial preparations for his defence.
Just days ago, a defence witness testified about the amputee's vulnerability on his stumps. Pistorius orthopedic surgeon Dr. Gerald Versveld said he battled to walk on them and often lost his balance and fell, leaving him vulnerable in dangerous situations. The dramatic footage broadcast shows Pistorius running on his stumps with an imaginary gun in his hand. In another scene, he's seen carrying a woman believed to be his sister Amy out of his bathroom. The video was shot by the Evidence Room, a US-based company specializing in forensic animation. The defense team engaged its services for visual mapping. In a statement, Pistorius' lawyers say it was only for trial preparation and that the material was obtained illegally in breach of a non-disclosure agreement. Excerpts of the footage have since been pulled from the channel's website. They were replaced with stills.
It is very relevant. It's another factor because we are really dealing with the question of is Pretorius telling facts or not. And if Oscar is not, and there's a video which indicates something different, the judge will have to decide.
The NPA declined to comment. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Mop-up operations are due to begin today in the Cape Town metro following devastating floods over the weekend. About 26,000 people in more than 70 informal settlements have been affected. They're receiving food aid, clothes and blankets.
Is drenched. Even cemeteries. Families couldn't bury their loved ones.
We went to buy buckets. Then we took the water out of the grave with buckets. After that, we could see it was not working. We approached the guys who had the engine, the generator. Then they tried in vain to take the water out of the grave.
We are so sad. We've never seen anything like it.
Winter rains, a perpetual problem for people in informal settlements.
We are living in this situation and it is continuously happening because it started each and every year. We are in the same situation. So we tried to speak to people from the Office of Disaster Management, which they promised to help us, but we've been waiting for them.
It seems, though, that the worst is over. The cold front has moved towards the eastern parts of the country. Nomaoto Solwandle, SABC News, Cape Town.
Yeah, let's take a quick look now at what you're talking about on social media. Of course, at SABC Newsroom is where you can send your pictures, especially flood pictures, from anywhere around the country. Comments, opinions are welcome. We love those interactions. This is what you're talking about this morning. Athena says, 1 minute it's sunny, the next it's hardcore rain. Cape Town weather, yes, it's been going on for more than a week. Nicholas Ford says, oh yes, the rain yesterday was really bad and it's like 5 degrees outside, really cold. Cape Town weather. Ashwell Gordon, today's word, icy. Definitely the coldest Cape Town winter morning. Beautiful sunrise starting. There you have just a picture. Please drive safe, Cape Town. Asks Weather SA. And there you have some more flood pictures coming in online. That one from Eraheim. Water for Africa at the moment, it seems as if, well, there's simply too much water out there in Cape Town. More than 26,000 people affected in 70 areas in that province. Well, let's take a look now at the front pages of the world. Well, most of the papers are looking at the weekend's big sporting events. In the United States, the Wall Street Journal showing Novak Djokovic with his Wimbledon trophy after he beat 7-time champion Roger Federer in 5 tough sets. While papers in Europe look at news from the Tour de France and the World Cup as the tournament, well, teams are now preparing for the semi-finals this week. Of course, the European teams and the South American teams will be fighting it out. Of course, a couple of big matches this week once again. Time for us to take a short break. Newsroom on SABC News.
I once saw a flower blossom through 27 prison bars of yesterday's unjust flames. I felt an old woman's anticipation for the country's first open elections. And I heard the loud celebrations of that flower's historic inauguration. I was there when Unity sang of how the Springbok never held anything back. And we saw a first-time band of 11 men, Shibobo possibility throughout the land. At the foot of Africa, time remembers how truth can reconcile a people. We carved our name into space, and on the world stage, our art stood united. When we blow that vuvuzela, the whole world goes into a trance. And even in that tearful hour of the flower's separation, we are a people who see the music and hear the flowers dance. SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. This week, the Gauteng government will introduce an e-toll review panel to the province. The panel will be looking at the type of paying methods that could replace the current toll billing system. This comes after Gauteng Premier David Makura said in his recent State of the Province address that new proposals on a lasting solution to hundreds of millions in outstanding fees has to be found. Now, we here at Newsroom wanted to hear from motorists themselves if they're still refusing to pay their e-toll bills and ask them why. Here is what they had to say.
Daylight robbery, really. I got my first bill about a month ago, and on there it stated if I'd paid before a certain date, they would decrease it. But that date was had already passed by the time I got the bill, and I thought, well, what was the use of that then? So I forfeited that little allowance they gave me. But I thought, I'm not going to pay it. I know people whose bills are in the excess of tens of thousands and they're not paying either. So until it comes to a point where it's like a law or they're going to force you to pay, I'm not going to pay. And I hadn't heard about the tax fuel law that you just spoken about. I need to read up a bit about that. But, I mean, no, I just won't at all.
But in a way, they're going to force you if they're going to put, a tax on petrol. So,
well, I think at that point people will actually start burning the gantries and destroying the gantries. And I often thought I would as well, if I had a gun or something, just shoot the things.
And government has recently said that because people aren't paying their bills, they're going to put a tax on a fuel cost to make them basically force them to pay it and to make them pay it in a different way. What do you feel about that?
Well, I feel we should support public transport if it was safer.
Have you received some bills and have you paid?
Yes, I did receive some bills. I've not paid yet because I'm still maintaining that it's not good, it's not okay. It's not okay for us, not okay for our country. Here, there's a lot of toll gates in Gauteng, and now here comes the e-tolls, and we pay a lot of petrol. And they don't explain why actually it was not came to the people before they implement this thing. We are total against. I'm supporting those people against it. I'm with them as well.
And government has now actually suggested because people aren't paying their e-toll bills that they might put it as a tax on fuel. So we might be paying even more for fuel so they can get that money. What do you think about that?
Still, I'm concerned because there's already tax on petrols. There's also insurance that is paid for petrol, where I think it comes to rough and also their fees for environmental situation, the fumes, there are all those things. But they still have to consult, not just implement. It's why it is unfair, you know.
I receive e-tolls about every month. I don't pay them. I actually just throw the accounts in the bin. I mean, it's not illegal to not pay them, so, you know.
Right. And then government has recently said that they might actually, because people aren't paying, just put a levy on fuel to make people pay this. How do you feel about that?
I feel it's going to affect the taxis and the buses a lot more, and foods, it's just going to go up. Everything's going to be very inflated, so I think that's an even worse idea. So, yeah.
Do you think they're listening to the people?
Not at all. No, not at all.
Well, those are just some of the views of some of those using the facility at the moment. Now, in studio this morning, we're joined by Hart Dembowski, the chairman of Justice Project South Africa, and then Marius Late from the Automobile Association here in South Africa to talk e-toll alternatives. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Morning.
Howard, if I can start with you, Justice Project has from the start said that this will not work. Are you happy now that we are looking at alternatives?
Yes, I think we would say that we're cautiously happy about the fact we're starting to actually look at alternatives, given the fact that this whole thing has been implemented on an autocratic basis. Government has not been prepared to listen. They've been led by the nose by the likes of Nazir Ali and Zanral, who've been telling them what a wonderful system this is and how it really works very well, and it's the user pays principle, etc., etc. But now, as we've been saying since a long time before this was implemented, this is not a user pays principle, this is a some users pay principle, because really, at the end of the day, you have no way of compelling people to actually pay. And, you know, I've said this on numerous occasions. Let's forget about the people of Gauteng refusing to pay. Are we going to actually be approaching the Department of International Affairs to get extradition orders for people from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Botswana, etc., who come and drive on our roads and don't pay e-tolls? We can get this money in very simply, very easily, very efficiently, and at a very low cost by simply implementing a fuel levy. And that fuel levy can either be national or it can be based on a basis of just a provincial levy. But if we were to bring in a provincial levy of 14 cents per litre in Gauteng, we would pay this debt of 23 billion, I think it's actually up to 30 billion now, off in a period of less than half the period that we're looking at paying it off under e-tolls, enriching foreign companies and enriching SANRAL. I think this is ridiculous. SANRAL should stick to what its actual core objective and its core function is, building national roads, and stop fighting with the citizens of South Africa. It's not making itself popular. It's got a job to do.
What are the views of the AA?
The AA, I'm in full support. I still feel there's a lack of evidence of an alternative method of funding. I think talk is cheap. In the end of the day, the evidence must be on the table. What is important, and where I fully agree, we need a dedicated road fund, and we need to look holistic at the total road infrastructure picture and how to fund all the roads in South Africa in the end of the day. We know that this e-toll will impact on the economy of the country, and the impact will be on all of us, everyone, in the end of the day. But I fully agree. I think it is now time for us to move to a dedicated fund which is transparent, that we know where the funding is going, and there should be meaningful consultation on any developments on the e-toll. I'm saying meaningful consultations. That means that people must understand what they are paying for in the end of the day.
After the election, do you feel that the government has now taken stock a little bit about what the people are saying? Do you get a sense there's that move that now is at least a discussion will be had on this review panel around e-tolls?
Well, Eben, I'm not a politician and I don't like commenting on political issues. But the one thing that I will say is that we need to actually look at the facts surrounding this. By the 28th of February this year, 543 billion, with a B, rand had not been collected in the first 3 months of the operation of e-tolling. We've now had it, we are going into the 8th month. We are well over R1 billion that has not been collected, that has not been paid towards this debt. We're required to pay R2 billion a year in order to settle this debt. So I need to ask you a very simple question, throw it back to you. Is this a political move or is this a financial move? Is government saying, hang on, maybe we shouldn't have to be bailing SANRAL out on this. Yeah. Maybe what we should be doing is listening to reason. And I disagree that there's no evidence of an alternative funding method. The funding method of the fuel levy is pure evidence. It collects 46 billion rand a year. The problem with it is that the fuel levy has been plundered since the early 70s when it was introduced and when the apartheid government decided that it was a good idea to go and dip into that to fund the occupation of Namibia and the Angolan War. Unfortunately, when our change of government came about, we chose to change some of the ills of apartheid, not all of them, because this particular ill of apartheid, of the apartheid era, is actually quite convenient, because if you can go and dip into a fund whenever you want to and spend money on other things, heck, that's a great idea. But we as citizens are starting to ask these questions. Where has all this fuel levy money evaporated to? Because it seems to have gone up in fumes.
Is enough?
Yes, if I can add, and I've mentioned the dedicated road fund. I think the fuel levy is a good example. I mean, that's a big pool of money that we can use. And maybe even if it's only 1%, 2%, we don't know. So what we need to know and understand is the revenue requirement model for the system in its totality. But that must be transparent. So, yes, we do need to investigate other economic models in the end of the day.
SANRAL, they've not welcomed the proposal as a fuel levy as a replacement. What are the views on that?
Well, you know, unfortunately, let's have a look at the entire history of this thing. Okay, e-tolling exists nowhere else in South Africa. That's the first thing. Secondly, the irrationality of pushing through this dogmatic idea from the beginning has strongly suggested that somebody's palm has been greased somewhere along the line, and the reason they don't want an efficient system to be brought in is because that will expose whose palms were actually greased. The fact is, SANRAL should stick to its core efficiencies. Build roads. Stop interfacing with citizens. Stop threatening citizens. Let's just remember, from day one, SANRAL has been threatening citizens with imprisonment, threatening citizens with criminal records, with blacklisting on credit, etc., etc. You know what? It's a state agency whose task it is to build roads. Go build roads and stop fighting and threatening.
Yeah, and I will say in summary, if you go back to 2011, about 52,000 signatures of people that were so unhappy about this e-toll system. That should be a signal to them that people is not happy with the current system. Yeah. And I think there's a build up with the next round. There's going to be more people that's not satisfied with the current system.
Well, at this stage, just to butt in there, at this stage, 1.5 million people are not paying e-tolls. I think that is a big statement. That's a bigger statement than any petition could possibly be. Yeah. I agree. Petitions are wonderful, but they achieve nothing. At the end of the day, people are voting with their pockets and they're turning around and saying, we are not giving you this ridiculous amount of money. Come and take it from us in a way that we can't refuse. You know, tell me something. When last did you refuse to put fuel into your vehicle? When last did you do that?
That does not happen.
Exactly.
At my house. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. It is, this week, the Gauteng government will introduce an e-toll review panel to the province where discussions about new methods of payment hopefully will come under the spotlight there. Thank you once again for joining us. Maurice Late from the Automobile Association in South Africa, and Howard Demboski, who's the chairperson of Justice Project South Africa. Thank you once again. Let's take a quick look at what's happening on social media. Of course, at SABC Newsroom is where you can give us your contributions. Luke says, why you got e-tag? Don't you know about fight against e-tolls? Davey says, since Makura said they are reviewing the e-tolls, it makes sense not to pay them until the final decision is made. That's a sober thought. Tabo says, I guess all the loyal citizens should start preparing questions like, am I getting refunded? Hashtag e-tolls, he said. I don't think that's going to happen. Gas Magazine says, those who gave the go-ahead to e-tolls must pay back every cent to the people. In fact, the Gauteng Premier is reconsidering e-tolls. You should not pay as the future is not clear. If you pay, you will never get your money back when e-tolls are abandoned. And that's from Nick Botha, who put up that poster. Here we have a whole host of our citizens who, it seems to me, are against e-tolls. Well, that's from Edgar Home. Current snapshot, of course, those are just some of the citizenry against e-tolls. It's a discussion. Well, it's a discussion that will continue for the rest of the week. Of course, this morning on everyone's mind is Oscar Pistorius and the video that was leaked. I'm sure it'll be a discussion. The court has just got underway. Let's go straight to the North Gauteng High Court.